everything's fine on 93.9 Dublin South FM.
So much is going on in the world, and it is crisis all over, fast moving, and nobody knows in what direction it will go. But then during the time of crisis, like any other crisis, we get to see a pattern, we get to see a trend that actually defines the character of the country, the character of the leadership. And today we are going to talk about the character of India that is coming to the forefront. Today we will talk about the character of the Indian leadership that is coming to the forefront. So nations do not decline or grow in one single stroke. They decline in a pattern, in contradictions, in quite policy shift that appears technical, but then reveal a deeper strategic autonomy. Over the past few years, India has taken a series of decisions that, if you examine individually, may be defended as practical, as pragmatic, but when you stitch together, they raise a serious, sharper question. Is India acting in its sovereign interest or drifting into dependency under the language of reform and global integration? Now, these question marks we have to raise for every policy that is being discussed today, because there are surprises. I'm going to talk about 5 or 6 of them. Leave it to the judgment of my dear audience whether there is a leadership, as we call it, the Vishwaguru. All of a sudden, the oil diplomacy between India and rest of the world, it has moved from discount to dependence. Now let me explain what that means. After the Ukraine conflict began in 2022, India increased its purchase of discounted crude oil from Russia. Before 2022, Russian oil formed less than 2% of India's import. By mid-2023, it accounted for nearly 35 to 40% of total crude imports. The consequence was that India saved billions. Estimates suggest that discounted Russian crude oil allowed refiners to improve margins, and that in turn helped India avoid the inflation. Although on ground the inflation stays where it is, but inflation due to oil was arrested. It was prevented. Now, India imports more than 85% of the crude requirement. Therefore, if you look at the oil, the energy, it is a matter of survival. It is not a matter of ideology. We have to buy oil from outside countries. Now, signals indicate that India will reduce or completely stop Russian purchases and instead buy more oil from United States. American crude is typically more expensive, obviously, due to its logistic and the price that Trump is putting on India. So why abandon a cost advantage in a developing economy like India, where the fuel inflation hits the poorest the hardest? The direct cost implication of a higher oil prices comes on a kilo of onions and vegetables. So why is the government doing it? Also, India's foreign exchange reserve hovers around $600 billion. Now, oil import costs around $150 billion. So even a $5 to $10 per barrel difference over millions of barrels compound into billions. So why is the Indian government stopping the cheaper, inexpensive Russian oil and buying the expensive United States oil? All this shift has happened in the latest US-India trade deal, which I would like to call as Trump-Modi deal. Very surprising, but it is so. The other one is the HPV vaccine drive. And this is despite the dark history and the tragedy in Andhra and Gujarat some 10 years ago. So what is HPV? It is a kind of virus which India wants to fight. As it is, there are few cases, but then all of a sudden, India has approved a nationwide push for the vaccination for girls, young girls. And who are the advocates for this vaccine drive? Sudha Murthy, supported by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now, in today's time, when everything has come out in open about the character, the intention of Bill Gates, Indian government is not only just stopping the intervention of Gates Foundation, there is not even a scrutiny about why Bill Gates Foundation is interested so much with the HPV vaccination for young girls in India. The reference is, in 2009 to 2010, a demonstration project on the young lives of India, young girl lives of India for HPV vaccination was carried out in Andhra Pradesh and Gujarat. And it was supported by PATH NGO, but funded by Gates Foundation, same Bill Gates who is today tainted. And that led to a controversy after the reports of adverse events and death of these tribal girls. They were guinea pigs, sorry to say that. There were inquiries and only to find that there were lapses. So my question is, after 15 years, why is India suddenly approving under the aegis of the Prime Minister of India and the Bill Gates Foundation and supported and advocated by Sudha Murthy, suddenly bringing HPV vaccination to India without having a clear data transparency, and why the government is not discussing such an enormous program for vaccination in Parliament? India has become a laboratory for an external foundation. Why? Why all of a sudden? Then I want to bring another factor that has happened suddenly. On one hand, cow protection politics have dominated public disclosure for last 15 years. Mob lynching were carried out on suspicion of beef consumption, and that has occurred in several states. People have been killed. Innocents have been killed. While on the other hand, India remains the largest exporter of meat, cattle meat, let's say that. And it is commonly referred to as beef in trade statistics. Now, this holy cow has been touched by 200 artificial insemination centers reportedly to be created in state of Maharashtra. And again, who is doing it? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So they are being overly supported, overly given access to the touchy and the religious issues of cows in India, beef in India. If the cows is a sacred political rhetoric in India, why large-scale meat export is tolerated, and why indigenous breeds are symbolically put into a cattle lab for crossbreeding, for genetic manipulation by none other than Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? There has to be questions on that. Another surprise that has come in is the appointment of Rothschild and Company as independent advisor of IPO of National Stock Exchange. Now, Rothschild is a storied European investment banking family firm with over 200 years of history. They had bullets and bandages in a war. They were profiting on both sides of the war. They have advised governments, structured sovereign debts, and operated across geopolitical fault lines. So my concern is not mythological, it is about India's sovereignty. Why? Because India's National Stock Exchange is one of the largest exchanges in the world by derivatives volume. It is the pillar of India's financial infrastructure, and the strategic financial architecture is going to be advised by foreign private entity which has deep global entanglements which are questionable. India has capable domestic institutions like SBI Capitals or Axis Capital. So if India's independence in capital market is not a priority, and there is an import of a foreign advisor for the Indian capital market, there has to be questions to be raised. And the amount of data that the National Stock Exchange will pass on to the Rothschild is going to be a question of India's financial sovereignty. Questions must be raised. Why all of a sudden? The other story is about PFAS, which is a forever chemical. Now, this chemical is found in many items of daily consumption, and it is dangerous. It stays in the body for a very long time. It has created havoc in the environment for decades. Now, the story goes, in Italy, there was a public outrage over PFAS contamination, leading to the plant closure and stricter environmental enforcement. Yet, reports suggest that the production facilities linked to such chemical operations have been relocated to countries with more pervasive regulatory environment like India. Now we know that India already faces severe pollution burden. 14 of the 20 most polluted cities in the world are in India. Groundwater is contaminated. It is affecting billions. And Indian government has allowed relocation of this polluting PFAS plant into Maharashtra, into Vidarbha in India. Now, development does not mean becoming a dumping ground of some modern European developed countries. European citizens demand clean water and air, so they are shifting all the pollution into India. Now, what is going to be the cost? Is Indian lives cheap? Is Indian life less consequential than the European lives? The question is, why has the Indian government all of a sudden allowed to dismantle an Italian company which is known for contamination into India? The other big story that has come all of a sudden is the agreement between Starlink, yes, Elon Musk's company called Starlink, and your Aadhar card. Now, India has built one of the largest biometric database through Aadhar. It has all the details of your banking, personal details, age, profile, caste. Now you will have a caste census also. Your telecom, everything is there on that Aadhar. And it is managed by Unique Identification Authority of India. 1.3 billion people data is sitting on Aadhar. Now there is an agreement between Starlink, Elon Musk company, to operate in India for data validation and digital infrastructure partnership. We do not have a data privacy and data governance act in India. We have spoken about this earlier also. And now everything is moving to an American company, to outside India. How many American citizens' biometric or financial authentication data is held or processed by Indian entities? Tell me. The answer would be negligible. This agreement is a direct hit on India's national security in 21st century. Why is Elon Musk allowed to have hands on India's Aadhar card and data sovereignty? Why it was not discussed in parliament? The other story I would like to conclude is the silence on Iran. The Indian Prime Minister has not given any reaction. For that matter, any government official or government from the Foreign Ministry, Defense Ministry has given any reaction to the situation in Iran. Iran had been a long-term friend of India. Iran and India had civilizational ties. Ayatollah Khomeni had ties from Lucknow in India. Whether it was the government of Congress or the BJP, India had been a friend of Iran over a period of time, not only as a friend of civilization, but a strategic partner in the region. And then Iran's leadership is assassinated. Indian Prime Minister is silent. There are civilian casualties. 168 young children, girls, are killed in a strike by Israel and US, and India is silent. India is called Vishwaguru, the moral voice. It is supposed to be the moral authority, but then it has failed miserably. Why? Whether it was Chabahar Port project, which symbolized strategic cooperation between India and Iran, or whether it was Iran's stance on Kashmir, or it was former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's stance on Iran, they all have fell silent because the current government and the current leadership of India is silent. The question is why? Now I want to take you all connecting the threads to these 7 points I just spoke. There is a pattern. They are not isolated incidents. India's shifting towards American dependence, India's handover of public health to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, India's agriculture and genetic handover to a foreign philanthropic non-government organization, India's financial advisory trusted to Rothschild, India's industry absorbing the pollution of the Europe, India's digital infrastructure is open to foreign actors. Why has it happened suddenly? Because Epstein files have come into play. All these decisions have played suddenly because India's top leadership, top business leadership, top ministerial leadership, their names have appeared in Epstein files. And that is how the threads of governance, the threads of foreign influence, specifically from Israel and from America, have led to the decisions impacting the population of India. India is silent, not because it doesn't believe in Iran, because they are told to not speak about Iran. Indian leadership is not representative of the Israel's position on Iran. In fact, there are more Shia Muslims in India than the entire population of Israel. So when it comes to Iran, when it comes to Ayatollah, Indian government ought to speak against the assassination of head of the state by moral dignity, by moral responsibility, and if they wanted ever to be the leader of the world on grounds of moral authority. Somebody else is pulling the strings of India, and we know that Epstein files are consequential. So India reveals a deeper surrender of its strategic policy. Lots of question marks on the Indian government. We will continue to follow these stories. We will continue to join and stitch all the abrupt decisions that this government is taking, especially after Epstein files have been released. I leave you until next week. Stay safe, stay informed, dutifully ask questions. At the end of the day, someone has to stand up. Bye for now.
You are listening to 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Broadcasting from the Dundrum Town Centre, this is Dublin South FM.